Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to E2 Radio. I'm Kurt Franklin, Executive Editor at Enterprise Efficiency and your host for E2 Radio. Today we've got a fabulous guest and a critically important topic, data leakage. Now, our guest is someone who has extensive experience in trying to put an end to data leakage. My guest is Rohit Khanna, who is Executive Vice President for Global Strategy and Corporate Development at SEEBURGER. Now, while there, he is responsible for SEEBURGER's global strategy, M&A, global channel and alliances, all sorts of things, their industry analyst relations, and the file transfer product portfolio. I think that's going to be a very important part of what we talk about today. SEEBURGER is a global provider of business integration and secure managed file transfer solutions. Now, before coming to SEEBURGER, Khanna was Senior Vice President at Axway and Vice President at Cyclone Commerce, a leading provider of B2B integration and supply chain software solutions for Fortune 500 companies. Rohit, welcome to E2 Radio.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Now, I want to first sort of try to frame our discussion. The big data losses that make the news seem to be those that are caused by outside actors. But data leakage is all about insiders doing something to cause an unauthorized loss of information. How big an issue is this? I mean, is it bigger than outside intrusion, smaller? How big a problem are we talking about?
Well, obviously, as we all know, most of the data breaches actually are an internal problem. It is a big problem. It is a big issue, especially for large corporations who are multinational, global companies where systems are at different places of the world, and data is being transferred from one system to another system between different data centers. Although this data is still internal to the company, internal in the company domain, however, it's still going insecure, and hence that creates a huge security hole. We have seen, observed a lot of data loss, a lot of data theft has been happening internally, and obviously you know the big story of Wikipedia, etc., where a lot of data have been stolen and on USB drives, etc., and been given out to the media. However, back to your question, as important it is to secure the data which is going outside your company, it's as important it is to secure the data inside.
Okay. Now, you mentioned several dimensions of this, and I want to look at each one of these. But the first one that I want to look at, you mentioned the phrase data theft. And to me, data theft implies some sort of intention on the part of the person sending the data in an unauthorized manner outside the company. Is there any way to tell the significance of intentional data leakage versus that is inadvertent, either because someone didn't know the rules or someone just inadvertently lost data somehow on a mobile device? Are these two different classes of problem, or is it all thrown into one big pot?
Oh, that's a very, very good point. Actually, they are many times thrown in one pot. However, vendors like us and many others who are in this market, we understand the difference. Look, malicious behavior, the intentional behavior of stealing data you can never prevent. Yes, you can have all checks and balances, you can have security policies, but as the technology is getting advanced, the person who have the intent to steal the data is also getting advanced in how he or she steals the data. So it's very difficult for us or any other technology company to really create boundary and think through all the various scenarios which this person who want to intend to steal the data. However, the other side of the coin, which is data loss unintentionally, right? I'll give you a good example. I'm sure you use your Microsoft Outlook to send email many times. You type Dave, for example, on your to-line, and there are many Daves coming, and if you're not focusing right, you can click on the wrong Dave and attach a very important confidential file to your email and send it. Now, this is what I call unintentional data loss, where it was an accident. However, the file went out. A very big, a good example of this is what happened with Chevron recently, where an employee unintentionally sent a file of how they trade futures from oil perspective, and that data was leaked to the media. But again, that was unintentional. There are a lot of such unintentional accidents, and vendors like ours have developed technologies to prevent such unintentional data loss. Obviously, we try our best also to stop the intentional, but like I said, we are always catching up on those technologies, and in today's world, if a company comes back and says they have thought through all the scenarios how a thief will steal a data, I would say I would challenge them for sure.
Okay, now we're going to get to the solutions in just a couple of minutes, but I want to look at a couple of more dimensions to the problem before we do, so we know what we're trying to solve. In your answer there, you mentioned people inadvertently sending sensitive information to someone outside the company. And to me, that brings up the next sort of dimension to this problem, and that is the difference between communications that are intended to be within the company and those between someone within the company and someone outside the company, because there are obviously legitimate cases where you want to send information to people outside. That's how sales happens. That's how partnerships happen. Is much data lost when the intent is to be within the company, or is this almost entirely a problem that's taken care of or created when people are going outside the company with their intention? I mean, do people really think that they're sending something to Bob in the cubicle down the hall when they end up sending it to Bob in Paraguay?
So all your scenarios, all the things you said, they are correct. It's both internal and external. So if I'm sending a data over to Bob, which is in my own company, and it just happened that I selected a wrong Bob at the email address in my Outlook, yes, I can send some confidential data unintentionally outside, and it has happened to me. Personal experience, not one time but multiple times. Now, again, intentional people can send the data unintentionally, and I'll give you good examples to answer your question. A very good example is, one time we found out in one of our customer site, a disgruntled sales guy saved the customer database into a zip file and emailed that zip file to his own personal email address from the company before leaving. Now, thanks to the technology out there where we could prevent such data loss through data loss protection technologies, which our company like us provide. However, this is an example where an employee sending a data or exporting the customer database outside to its own. I give you another example is M&A transactions. This is where what you are talking when a company is getting bought out or we are buying another company. There is a lot of data interaction happens between investment bankers, between the acquiree company and the company which has been acquired. And all that data we have seen many times, it's going in clear. And especially if you're a public company, that is a very dangerous and confidential data which is flowing outside, without no encryption, without no protection. And also, many times, if you ask a CIO, many times CIO would say, look, I do not know who's sending what data to whom and when. And hence, the solutions exist to check that today.
Okay. Well, it seems like we've done a good job of talking about the problem, so it seems like it's time to turn our attention to some of the best practices and solutions that are available out there. Before we do, I want to remind our listeners that at the bottom of the hour, at 2:30 Eastern Time, Rohit and I will be leaving the air and going full-time into the live chat that's already underway at enterpriseefficiency.com. We hope you'll join us there, or better yet, go ahead and hop into that conversation right now and start taking part in the discussion around best practices and data leakage. So, Rohit, it seems to me that the solution to data leakage is fairly simple. I mean, I know that some of our most sensitive government documents are protected by being in a place where you simply don't have the physical ability to transfer them outside. As someone said, an air gap is a wonderful security device. So how about we just say we're cutting the internet connection and everybody go back to pen and ink, and it solves all this massive file transfer problem. Is that the way to go, or is there something between open access and no access that is the best kind of solution?
Sure. Well, obviously, the former is not possible in today's world. We are connected. We are actually more connected than we were ever. With the likes of Facebooks and any other social networking sites, and also with the global business happening around the world, where manufacturing is being outsourced, designs are being sent over to or outsourced over to offshore facilities for cheaper manufacturing. This is a part of our life. I think being networked, being connected, whether wirelessly or wired. So, obviously, we have to figure out a way how to protect our data, how to protect the data leakage intentionally or unintentionally. And, and hence there have been a lot of technologies developed in this arena. This is a big topic. And I'm not, by the way, want to make sure that I'm not talking about hacking here, right? I'm not talking about where intentional hackers are coming in and hacking and stealing your data. That is what I would call, obviously, an attack, which there are again technologies to prevent such, and also it's a big topic being discussed all around the world. What I'm talking about here is unintentional or perhaps intentional attack from internal to external. Data transfers, which are confidential data transfers from point A to point B, whether it's from production houses over to streaming media provider, or it's data which is being sent between attorneys and client. So that's the data which we are trying to protect here and trying to safeguard. So going back to your point, we got to figure out how to be networked how at the same time how to protect our privacy and also the data which we do not want to expose to other parties if that data is not supposed to go externally.
Okay, now talking about protection, we had a question from the chat that's already in progress over at Enterprise Efficiency. One of our community members asked about the little disclaimers that seem to be ubiquitous on the bottom of enterprise emails. You know, the ones that say, if you're not the intended recipient, please delete this before you read it to this point, that kind of thing. Do those offer any protection, or are we going to have to look beyond legal or extra-legal wording on emails to find some protection for our data?
I think it's a very, very good point and very good question, and it's I think philosophical discussion. You know, when some valuable information is being sent accidentally out, I think it all depends on the recipient's moral standards and also what the recipient like to do with that data. So sure, you know, some recipients would read the disclaimer, legal, and perhaps be nice enough to delete it and forget about it. But you know, some recipient may be there who may use that data to their benefit if it's beneficial for them. But that's all after the fact, right? I mean, that is all. We are kind of taking an approach where, we will make accidents no matter what. So it's recipient's responsibility to make sure that we are protected. I think it's if you ask a CIO of a company, the CIO would rather take a proactive approach of saying, well, I'd rather not have that data go out than remind the recipients of, hey, did they read that legal disclaimer or not? So, you know, disclaimers are okay. You know, from a legality perspective, you can go to that person after the fact, lawsuits, etc. But why to have that accident happen? I mean, if you can prevent it, if there are you know, solutions and technologies available today to prevent such things, you know, why not we take a proactive approach? And you know, that's, again, I'll give you an analogy. I mean, why do we have firewalls today all around the company? Well, because we want to protect. You know, what if we just say a disclaimer? Hey, you know what? Our doors are open, but here's a disclaimer. If you come in and you see something, then, you know, please read disclaimer. It doesn't. You see, it doesn't work that way. So I think disclaimers are good. You know, it is a good check mark for legal folks, but you know, obviously we got to be proactive in protecting our data when it goes out. And by the way, I'm not just talking email data. I'm just also talking small data here. I'm also talking the large data, big data, which is becoming a more and more issue nowadays. You know, just the files nowadays is becoming bigger than what even email systems can handle. So a lot of people today in the industry use unsecured FTP protocols, for example, and dump the data on our FTP server and let, you know, customers, partners, you know, they're creating partner ecosystem come in and download it. Yeah, we are through password, but it's all insecure data, and that's what I'm worried about. And we have seen this many times lately. You know, again, going the same context. Lately, we have seen a CAD/CAM asset out of a PLM system, that's product lifecycle management system of a OEM manufacturer. This is a design of a concept car, was stolen outside from an FTP server in China, and this was a Chinese manufacturer who was supposed to pick up the data and create a prototype for that OEM manufacturer. But, you know, found out somebody else took it, a design, and this is intellectual property which was stolen. You know, the legal disclaimer is not going to do anything with this, as you can understand. Sorry, long answer to your short question there.
No, a good detailed question is our answer is I think what we're all looking for And speaking of detail, we're going to be able to get a lot more of that in the live chat, where Rohit and I will be going in about 10 minutes to join this conversation that's already in progress over there. You know, Rohit, you talked about the large data and the small data. So if you're thinking about best practices for stopping data leakage, I guess one of my questions is all data created equal? Or does there have to be some sort of formal recognition that some data is more valuable than other data, and you treat different categories of data differently when you're trying to make this whole idea of data leakage go away?
Yeah, this is also a very good point. As you know, I live in San Francisco, and we have many committees actually in San Francisco. We discuss exactly this point. Look, first, there have been many discussion on, well, we got to train our employees better and how to handle sensitive or non-sensitive data. We got to make sure that they take responsibility. All that stuff is good. However, like I told you, accidents happen. Happened to me, happened to many other people, without realizing whether that is a confidential data or not. And again, the importance of the data is depends on who is looking and who is reading that data. Some data may not be important to you, but it may be important to some other division in the company or some other people. So we treat whatever data gets out of the company, we treat that data confidential. So we go with that in mind, that every data is important, every data is confidential, and then we look at, well, is this data matching our confidential and our sensitive pattern which we have created. This is, by the way, a huge industry by itself. You may know, obviously, the data leak protection, DLP. There are a lot of big DLP providers like Symantec, like McAfee, Code Green Networks, etc. And they're all our partners in SEEBURGER's partner to prevent such data loss, where rules are being put in such solutions where the first rule is, look at every data, look at every content, be content aware, pick up the data and run through our rules. Is this data confidential? For example, go to the content and check, is this an M&A data? Go to the content and check if it's some kind of financial data. Go to the content and check if there's a privacy breach happening. Go and check if we are compliant to HIPAA or PCI or such regulations. As you know, I work for a German company, which is SEEBURGER AG, and in Germany we have a very strict privacy rules. So there are rules established around that data. Now, do we expect every employee in an organization to be familiar with what are all the rules of Sarbanes-Oxley, or what are the rules of PCI compliance, what are the rules of German privacy laws? No, we don't. They cannot, and if you're a large company, you just really cannot expect everybody to know, hey, is this sensitive or not? And that's why there are automated solutions being established to check, and it's not saying that, hey, you know what, by accident you send that data over because you did not know the rules, that you are a criminal. That's not what the intent is. The intent is, well, look, there's a check, there's a red alert, we caught it, and we go back and educate that employee and say, look, here is, be sensitive to it. Understand you can make the mistake again, but obviously that's why we have checks and balances on the edge of the application to make sure that these kind of data doesn't go out. So going back to your question, I feel, maybe my personal opinion is, every data should be considered important because it's contextual. For you it may not be important, but somebody else it may be important. Hence, we need to go and look at company policies, compliance rules, and other rules which you may have personally established, and check that data, whether it is important, confidential according to your policies or not. If it's not, let it go. If it is, then use other technologies to transfer the data, and that's where actually companies like us come in from.
Okay, now one of the things that you bring up are the technologies that are available, and I think it's a question that has to be asked. Are we at a point where just technology can solve this problem for us? Do the technologies exist such that we can put a layer or multiple layers of technology in place and not have to worry about how the employees act? Or do we still have to somehow mesh technology and training and all of the other traditional human elements of security in order to truly solve the problem?
I would say it's all of the above. Technology cannot solve all the problem. Technology cannot predict the pattern which a human will take. And obviously that is what I would call the nirvana. That is the best application which can self-learn and predict the future patterns. But we're not there yet. There are a lot of technologies, like one from SEEBURGER for managed file transfer, for secure file transfer, available in the market. There are many technologies from the DLP, data loss protection, for email loss protection out there in the market, which can secure and safeguard you from accidents, from sometimes malicious behavior. But again, there are always ways. I think human mind is much more advanced even today than many technology systems, computers out there. So I would say it is all. We got to train employees. We got to get them understand the ramifications of such data loss, such data leakage. We got to create policies in the company, both security policies, processes, and also, of course, then have technology answers, technology protection, so that in case a new employee comes in or an employee doesn't understand, forgot, confused, we can still protect, because once the data is lost, to get that data back is obviously a lot more work. And if that data is confidential, there can be a material effect to that data, whether it can be a brand management issue, a compliance breach issue, a cost control issue, or a competitive differentiation issue, and it may be too late. So hopefully that answers your question. I would say it's all of the above.
Okay. Well, we are just getting ready to head over to the chat. We'll be there in just a couple of minutes. But before we go, I have one last question I want to ask Rohit here. Let's say an IT executive at a company has suddenly realized they have a data leakage problem, and they don't have a formal policy in place. They've always just trusted in the goodwill of their fine employees to protect their data. Now they know that they've got to put a data leakage program in place. Where do they start? What's the first thing they should do in order to get down the path of effective data leakage protection?
Sure. Again, excellent question. I think the first question they got to ask themselves is, what is critical? What is most important to them? What kind of data are they trying to protect? Because you don't want to go to the other extreme where you make systems and configure systems in a way where it's counterproductive to the productivity of employees. They cannot send emails, they cannot send data, they're all locked out. So first thing is make a list of, this is important to us. This is critical to us. Second, obviously, define some kind of policies. Hey, if we have to protect, these are the policies we have to define. These policies are obviously the human behavior policies, and also these are the rules and checks we're going to put that in any product out there if that product exists to check such policies. And then go out in the market. There are enough material in the market. You can Google it out. on the policies, procedures, and also vendors like SEEBURGER who can provide standard policies as a part of the product, standard ways from encryption, decryption as a part of the product to prevent such large file transfer data breakage. And there are many vendors like that who can educate also. There are a lot of training available out in the market too. So, I would say hopefully these are the steps you take, and you can contact us anytime, and we can help. We can help anybody out there.
Rohit, I very much appreciate all of your answers, all the information, because this has been a very important set of questions and answers for anyone who's interested in making sure that their corporate data remains where it ought to be. I'd like to thank Rohit Khanna, Executive Vice President for Global Strategy and Corporate Development at SEEBURGER, for being our guest today. You've been great, and Rohit's going to be heading right over to the chat session that's already in progress at enterpriseefficiency.com. And I'd like to thank all of our listeners for being with us today. Please plan to join us again next week for E2 Radio. Check back at enterpriseefficiency.com for information on next week's program and on future E2 Radio programs. Until next week, for my guest Rohit Khanna, I'm Curtis Franklin, Executive Editor at enterpriseefficiency.com, saying thanks for listening. We will see you on the Internet.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation.